been cast, the die is set, but Alberta ain't ready to kneel just yet. They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne. This land is steel and it stands alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. Can't kill the mountain, can't drown the plain, can't burn the spirit that won't be chained. He stares down east with a calloused hand and says, this time we draw the line in the land. We ride sovereign steel through fire.
Welcome. It's 7-Eleven Daily Summary. It's Bruce Scholl here, and I'm excited to be here. Mark Carney, stop burning our dollars, you jerk. Get back into your hole. All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share this opportunity, and I've got a great guest coming up. I'm so excited to have her. It'll be Nadine Wellwood, and we are going to get into, oh, excuse me one second. I'm going to change my background there. All right, we're going to get into some of the latest or the recent, recent what's happening as far as Alberta independence. We're very excited about the decision from the judge on the constitutionality of our independence, and UCP has come out with Bill 14, so we need to talk about that as well as some other interesting things that are happening. Obviously, independence for Alberta is a critical things for our survival here, and I'm excited that you're here with me. All right, make sure to share this out, get some more eyeballs on this information as we get closer to our independence. I appreciate you being here and participating in this. Make sure to share this out. I am broadcasting on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, X. Let's see. Do I have it? You know what? Actually, give me 1 second. I've got to do one more thing. We got to get it onto where is it? Yournews.com. Geez, I think I was ready to go. I just got to get it out there. I apologize. Give me 1 second here. All right. Well, we're going to get into unscrewing some news, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. God bless you all. One of the things I also want to get started with is saying thank you. Thank you to my friends and family. Thank you to the circle of friends. Thank you to the circle of influence and the challenges that we have gone through in the last 5 years, because they really have shaped Unscrew the News and myself and taken us to this position that we are in. And I do want to say thank you to nuggetstacker.com as well, a local business right here in Calgary that will deliver anywhere in Canada, silver and gold. Get your silver and gold and protect your family's wealth. I am not your investment advisor, but I do suggest getting gold and silver for your family's wealth protection. You can give them a call at 1-866-644-2121. And no question is too crazy for them. They will definitely help you if you are new to this process. So give them a call. All right, just give me 1 second here, everyone. Just hold your horses, talk amongst yourselves while I get myself back together. Stand by. Just chill out, would you? Stop being so upset because I'm now trying to figure out something that I should have already done. Damn it. All right. Give me 1 second here. Nadine, she is patiently waiting there for me, but anyway, I just got to send this one clip out. I apologize for the delay. And there we go. Send it off. Okay. All right. We are back. So, like I said, I am excited to be here, excited to have you. I have Nadine Wellwood standing by, but I am coming to you from the heart of the battle-ready nation of Alberta, and we bring you truth and optimism. Our goal is to break free from the media, globalist mind control. Today is December 7th, 2025. This is episode number 232. And like I said, my guest is Nadine Wellwood. And I called this episode Alberta Inches Closer to Independence. I want to welcome Nadine Wellwood. She is a business owner and with extensive experience across health, recreation, aerospace defense, and finance sectors. Champions Alberta First policies through her advocacy for transparent governance and provincial self-determination. She authored the best-selling book, Alberta Rising, which I still need her to sign for me. And get your copy. We'll show you the link here soon. Which outlines principled strategies for Alberta's future amid discussions of separation, and uses her platform to critique federal overreach on issues like economic transitions causing job losses, judicial barriers to sovereignty referendums. I want to welcome Nadine Wellwood. Thank you so much for being here and helping us to understand what's going on with Alberta independence.
Thank you, Bruce. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. And I do feel that this is such a critical time in our history. And sometimes I look back and I'm thinking, wow, what we're going through is so important for, I think, and I might be silly, but for generations to come, we may look back on this time and think, boy, that was a really intense time. How did they get through that? We are just, I know, at the tip of this opportunity of this challenge, even though we've been suppressed and under the boot for the last 120 years here in Alberta. But it does feel like we're on a tipping point, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're at a tipping point. I think the independence movement has totally tipped in its favor, actually. And many of the announcements where I think even the UCP government had hoped it would tip it back the other way and kind of take some of the wind out of the sails, it's actually fueled the fire even greater. And so for so many people, when you talk about looking back on this in the future at some point, you're either going to look back at this and go, I gave it my all, right? And I fought for what I believed, and I fought for the future of my children. Or you're going to look back and go, I should have done more.
Mm-hmm.
And I am an advocate of, every day you need to do a little bit more, be a better version of yourself, keep moving, marching in the right direction. And so, for a lot of people, we get tired in this little fight that we're having here. But this is our time, and it is our time now to just dig deep into the inner strength that you have and to push on, because I'll tell you, it is going to be so worth it. This is the cog in the wheel right now. This is going to determine, I think, the future of Alberta, whether we are prosperous and free or whether we are under a totalitarian control. And that's not a very good outcome or a very good outlook, in my opinion, for my future, for my daughter's future, for the future of the people of Alberta.
I completely agree. So I wanted to, I wasn't going to, but now you just made me think, you know what, we've got to set the tone and understand what's happening around the world. And in case you haven't been paying attention and you're watching, and this is new information for you because I'm unscrewing your news for you. In case you haven't noticed, the EU just fined X, or they're trying to fine X, let's put it that way, 120 million euros for not censoring their European users, and that has had an extremely negative backlash to the EU, and I think it has really fueled the fire. So I guess what I'm touching on is not just X and being fined by the EU, but the censorship is really ramping up throughout Europe. Definitely here in Canada, we're talking about Bill C9 is now coming out, or they're ruling to push it through. And if we don't step out of the way of this massive totalitarian boot, we are going to be crushed, just like the rest of. We're all seeing this all happening at the same time. So we're not seeing absolute crushing in the UK, but they are definitely under the boot. Australia, Canada is definitely seeing it. We're seeing it all across Canada, and this thing with the EU is really playing out. Anyway, so the alternative, in case you're on the fence, I mean, the alternative is what we have the opportunity to do here, right in Alberta, is to create our own pathway and to look and have all of that drop off, around us, and we can move forward and create this amazing future, I think, of opportunity. We would be the beacon of North America, or we would be a beacon, I think, to the rest of the world, and how they might be able to accomplish the same sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that, Nadine?
I think what Alberta is right now, the opportunity we have is to truly be the modern day American Revolution.
Right.
Things have gone so completely far off the rails and so far down the path of totalitarian rule that Alberta is, in my opinion, one of the last free bastions that is promoting anything that resembles freedom. And that's saying something, because if you consider they just did a survey of all the countries, those that were the most free, and Alberta doesn't even show up on the list, let alone Canada.
Mhm.
So, but yet, in Canada, Alberta truly is that last bastion, that last beacon of hope.
Hmm. All right, I'm going to bring this up here quickly because I think this is a good place for people to start if they're considering, or if they're wondering what to do. What does this look like? This is a great book that Nadine Wellwood, my guest, has done. It's called Alberta Rising, A Principled Vision for a Sovereign and Free Nation. There's many books, and you can actually find them on my website. Go to unscrewthenews.com. Lots and lots of great books. But this is one of the, I think, a fantastic book, and it's an easy read from what you're telling me, that people are finding it very easy to participate in it, and it doesn't feel like it's a difficult participation in this book here. Sorry about that. 1 second.
You know,
Um,
people find it very entertaining. It starts with little quotes. The chapters are short. There's a lot of different subjects and topics, and it's designed to get you to critically think, to assess, and then to question why we're doing what we're doing. When America decided that it wanted to be free, it wanted to go its own way, it didn't want to be under the thumb of British rule any longer. They didn't sit here and go, oh, well, we're going to change this, we're going to amend that, we're going to keep Britain in America.
right,
They threw all that out and said, we want something new. We want something better. We want something bold. They were brave. There was courage in this. And that's realistically what the book is challenging people to think about is how free do you want to be? What does that look like? And, although I present ideas and make some suggestions and tell people to look in this country or that country for ideas, because it's hard to start with a complete blank sheet of paper.
right,
I understand that. So give people enough to go, oh, okay, well, I hadn't thought about that, but now what if we did this? And we have to start thinking about the unseen consequences to actions, because governments take action every day and then they don't stop to think long term what the consequences of that or whom might be affected. They're looking literally in their little tiny circle of influence. That's it. Will it get me elected or won't it? Will it get
right,
me more popular votes or won't it? And then, for lack of a better word, that is not in the best interest of the people that they serve. So, we really need to assess, actions, not words. And we have to start thinking about what it is that we truly want as a people of Alberta. And, we have, in my opinion, have to get this old, broken, now very totalitarian kind of thinking out of Alberta. And the only way we're going to be successful in doing that is through, in my opinion, an Alberta referendum that is a yes, and start the process to a completely free and principled new nation.
that sounds absolutely wonderful. Um, I wanted to ask you. So we had both been at the UCP AGM that was most recently on last weekend. I guess it was November 28th to the 30th, and there was a lot of great things. One of the things that I love, probably my favorite thing, is the networking and being able to talk to people that you may not have known, but similar minded and similar focused. Maybe you don't always agree about things, but you can certainly talk about things. And one of the things that was being expressed was, and because of what we were participating in the UCP AGM, is my thoughts really came to civics and teaching our children this process. And I applauded, a few families that brought all of their kids to the AGM, because I think it's fantastic that you're able to teach your children. And I think it's so critical when we move forward into this nation to teach our children these basics and civics as a real important part of creating this nation.
Well, it was Ronald Reagan who said, we're just one generation away from losing our freedom. If
Mhm.
we do not accept responsibility for educating our own children to ensure that the principles of freedom are taught, how are they to know? And unfortunately, the school system is, rewriting history, erasing history, and, indoctrinating our children into ideologies that literally are even contrary to freedom. And so, we do have to seriously take a hard look at our education system and make sure that we are preserving the values and promoting the values and then educating the next generation, not only to the values and the principles of freedom, but the consequences if we
Mhm.
don't.
Right. That's a really um, intense lesson that we need to teach our children. So, from that weekend, one of the things I want to ask you about is, obviously, the MOU in regard to this decision or this agreement or memorandum of understanding with our premier and King Carney came up. What are your thoughts as far as the weekend was concerned, and how this MOU either helps us move forward, or does it stall our independence movement?
Well, I think initially Danielle Smith and her cabinet hoped that this MOU would, I think, steal a little bit of the thunder out of the independence movement. And I think when you saw their faces at the AGM, all of them on that stage, when the boos happened, when she spoke to the MOU that very Friday,
Hmm.
I think they were honestly shocked. And here's the thing for me, I was not shocked at all. People
Neither
see
was I.
through
Yeah.
this MOU. They know that it is nothing. It is a promise, to consider this, to look at that, if this, that. There's a ton of conditions that she has signed Alberta up to that, and yet Mark Carney and the Liberal government, the federal government, has really no obligation to do anything.
Right.
And the reality is an MOU is just that. It's a memorandum of understanding. It's a promise, right? And if you read through the MOU, there is nothing in there. And then if you take a look at, the language, consent now is required. And they say, no, 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 there's no veto power from BC. But Carney has made it very clear that it's not consult, it is consent. And
Mm,
so, I was very, very pleased to see how the audience responded to that, because if 10 years ago, the people who were attending these AGMs were very different. They
right.
were businesses, they were people who had political interests, special interest groups, lobbyists. And those were the people who attended because they wanted something from government. Now, the people attending, and have been for the last 5 years, are more the grassroots, your everyday Albertan, your rancher, your farmer, your oil worker, the mom and dad who bought their kids out, who live in Calgary. And, these are the everyday people now that are attending this AGM, and they're educated. They've gotten smart. If anything, COVID successfully did was awoke this silent, quiet little beast. And now people have a hunger, and they know what freedom is, and they know the consequences of remaining silent and not becoming politically engaged and participating in their own process. So, when they booed, they understood that, this UCP government was trying to make a big fanfare and a big show
Mhm.
out of nothing. And they called them out on it. And it was beautiful. I was so happy to be there to witness it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was really quite moving, and I want to ask, or I want to talk about one thing. And one of the things that I noticed from the year prior was that people were sitting on their hands a lot more the year prior. Even, I mean, they were there, they were in attendance, but I don't think that they were in the mind frame of making their statement like they were this year.
Well, I think
The
people
boo,
do.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it had the opposite effect on the people in that room. I mean, it's fueling the fire of Alberta independence. It didn't steal any of the wind in those
Mhm.
sails at all. If anything, it just, it started a hurricane force, because people saw right through it, and they had no hesitation in calling her out on it this time around.
Mm.
And, whether you like Danielle Smith or didn't like Danielle Smith in that room, everybody, the majority of people in that room, just shared the same similar boo sentiment. And that's impressive, because even the people who are fans of Danielle Smith, it was a very strong message, that she's not going to get a win on everything,
Right.
that she has to be honest and transparent and open with people. And the reality is, with respect to the MOU, the part that really hurts me the most when I read through that was the commitments on behalf of Alberta with respect to this industrial carbon tax and all this net zero nonsense that we still continue to discuss, and carbon capture. And Mark Carney is an environmental zealot, right? I mean, Stephen Gibault, Mark Carney, really no different. And this whole climate change, I mean, we've got countries around the world now are acknowledging that it doesn't work. I mean, even Europe understands that
Mhm.
green does not work. And, they're paying the price for it in so many ways. And Canada continues to go down the path. And the fact that Alberta is actually entertaining the same language and still entertaining, Canada's, vision in net zero and carbon capture and green, I find that, and I think Danielle saw that in the room. People are not participating in
Right.
that any longer, and they're
Well,
calling her out on it.
yeah.
So
I think you were about to say the word that I'm going to use now. I thought it was offensive. I
it was
think it's
offensive.
Yeah, I think it's misappropriated, and they understand. I think that they deeply understand that it is all, and this might not be the right word for it, but it's all garbage. It's 100% not what it's meant to be. Mark Carney even knows. I mean, there is no way that he believes that he's saving the planet. There is an undercurrent of, I'm going to control, or I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to, obviously make Brookfield the king of Canada, and I'll be the caretaker. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not the the meaning behind his green initiative isn't there. It's not truthful.
Well, if you
That's
look at
obvious. You can
Algora
see it.
Steel, Algora Steel is laying off 1,000 people, and
Yeah.
Carney and the federal government is trying to blame this on tariffs. It has nothing to do with tariffs. And I love how their own union came out and spoke out to point out that this is federal policy. This is not anything to do with the tariffs. This was in the works. They gave them $500 million
Right.
to transition to more green, and now we have 1,000 people being laid off. You look at Stellantis. The federal government gave Stellantis $15 billion, and Stellantis literally walked that just south of the border and then reinvested $13 billion in the United States. Um, you look at Ukraine. I mean, the waste that's going on in Canada, we have given Ukraine billions upon billions of dollars.
Mhm.
We now know that it's corrupt. There's theft, there's fraud, there's all sorts of things going on in Ukraine that are unethical, immoral, and, totally, totally corrupt. And yet, what do? We give them more money. So, we are giving away money that we don't have, and we're taking it from our own people in a time of an affordability crisis. And yet you have Carney, who stands up in front of everybody and says, oh, life is more affordable. I'm not sure what planet he's living on, because life has definitely gotten more expensive. And you look at this industrial carbon tax, he's so proud to announce that 600%, 6 times is what his objective is.
Mhm.
And you have to understand, he says, well, no, it's not a consumer tax. No, it's not a direct tax on the consumer. It's an indirect, hidden tax on the consumer. Because when you tax the producer,
Yeah.
and
True.
then their prices at the source go up, everybody in the supply chain underneath that one producer, all of those prices are going to go up. And in the end, it is the taxpayer who is going to pay for that. And then he turns around and talks about trying to attract investment to Canada. Oh my good Lord, that's laughable. I'm
Mhm.
going, stuff like this is going to just cause investment, and it already has been fleeing. We've lost 30% of our foreign business investment in the last 5 years, and it's policies like this that are going to drive them out even faster. There is no way that this is attracting investment. It is doing the exact opposite. It doesn't address affordability. It's going to hurt the middle class the most. And when you look at it, Danielle Smith committed to April 1st to seeing this through. Before, we could be 2040 in
Yeah.
discussions around a pipeline or any of these other issues. But come April 1st, 2026, Alberta has a commitment on increasing the industrial carbon tax.
It's just absurd, and that's why she got booed. I want to talk about the booing just for one more second, and then we probably should move on. But Brett Wilson on X was very upset that she got booed, and I want to talk about that, because I think that, first of all, I want your opinion on this, but that is the and it's the right word. That was the arena to boo Danielle Smith, the leader of the member. The members were there. There was 4,500 members in that room or in that hall, and we booed her because she was not on the right page. She had, I'm sure that many of us had told her prior to that it was the wrong move, but she still went ahead and treated it like it was a win for Alberta. So the boo was, I think, completely, it was completely correct, and it was not he's saying that it was rude, to boo our premier. And I'm like, well, that's actually what we're there for, is actually to get a message from the grassroots Albertans to the person that's supposed to be leading us, supposed to be representing Albertans. So I think that it was necessary, and it was perfectly timed.
Well, I really don't care what Brett Wilson thinks. Billionaires, in my opinion, don't really have a say when it comes to practical, everyday Albertans and the expenses that they are going to be the ones to have to decide whether, it's hamburger or steak, or whether or not they eat or increase the temperature in the house by a degree or two. He doesn't feel any of those pressures. And, it was really obvious at the AGM just how disconnected some of these cabinet ministers have truly become from their base. And this is exactly the time when you do things like this, so that the message is unequivocal, it is definitive, and you know where your base stands. This wasn't about Albertans. This was a UCP AGM. This was the opportunity for the members to express themselves to their leader and to the ministers who were there. And that was the whole point of it. And for him to say it was rude, I thought it was offensive and rude to pass off this nothing promises burger, on people who were smart and educated and informed, and to pretend that this was some sort of great win for Alberta. That's what I thought was incredibly rude and incredibly offensive. If they'd come out and said, not what we wanted, a step in the right direction, okay, no commitments have been made, but she wanted to come out and say she wanted check boxes against her 9 items. And
Yeah.
this is what she thought, checked off 7 of the 9. And I'm like, oh no, there's no check boxes here. There's no commitment here to do
Right.
anything.
Well, the commitment's on us. The only commitment is on us, on
Yes.
Albertans. We've
Yes,
committed,
on the 1st of
and
April, we have a commitment to make.
that's right.
And one that is going to significantly hurt the middle class, low class Albertan more than anybody.
Absolutely. And in case you're not sure what Nadine was saying, when they increase the industrial carbon tax, that's going to increase the cost of your lettuce. It's going to increase the cost of your gasoline. It's going to increase the cost of your bread at the grocery store. Everything is going to go up because of the industrial carbon tax increase.
Anything that moves on a truck,
Yeah.
heat, electricity, all of these things are going to go up. All of them.
And your flight, because there was a lot of people that made decisions for their health based on whether they could fly to Mexico or not. Your flight to Mexico is going to be more expensive, by the way.
And you know what? Great that you can afford to fly to Mexico. My concerns are for the people who have already had to make the decision. They're lined up at food banks, Bruce. These are the people that I'm really concerned about. They're trying to keep the heat on. They're trying to keep food on the table for their children. Christmas is not going to be very pleasant for a lot of people this year. And that's my concern is, the everyday average person. And they shouldn't have to choose between feeding their children and, keeping a reasonable temperature in their home. And people are having to make those decisions. It's really funny. You used to see this in England all the time. All the seniors, a lot of them, they keep the heat down. They'll wear a sweater, and we're seeing Canadians now in a province that has energy, coming out the
Yep.
wazoo. Right?
Yep.
We have such an incredible abundance of resources here. There is no reason, and I talk about this in my book, there is no reason for Albertans to be paying taxes. No reason, not
Right.
personal income taxes. I'm in favor of a consumption tax to generate some revenues to cover some costs. But everybody pays that equally. One rule of law that applies to everyone. But
Yep.
personal income taxes, you are taking people and you are basically laying claim to them. You say, I own you. The government has laid a claim to you saying that I own you, I own everything you produce, and
Right.
I'm taking it first, because every employee, guess what comes off of your check first? The
Yeah.
government deductions, your EI, your CPP, your personal income taxes. They take all of that before you even see a penny. And that, in my opinion, you're punishing the most productive people in our society, and that's wrong.
Mm, that's a really great point. I like that idea. Can we move on now? Let's talk about what's going on today, or what happened. I think it was Thursday, with Judge Feasby and Bill 14. So, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in regard to the petition and the question that was put forward by Elections Alberta, saying that we have to find out if it's constitutionally acceptable to ask this question, which is, it seems like chasing the tail, doesn't it? Um, so the judge had to decide whether this was a constitutional question, came back and said it was not constitutionally appropriate to ask the question. Therefore, Albertans could not have a referendum. Is that what the decision essentially is?
So I guess first you have to understand how the question ended up in the courts to begin with. So we have a referendum act, which was put into place by Jason Kenney, actually. And
Mhm.
in the referendum act, there is a section that states that any referendum question cannot violate basically sections 1 through 35.1 of the Constitution. So a large part of this relates around Indigenous and treaties, okay? So that was part of it. Now, the UCP came out with their Citizens Initiative Act, and when they put this to legislature, she reduced the number down to 177,000 people,
Mhm.
made all this fanfare about making it easier. But what she didn't do, or the UCP didn't do, was remove this condition of not being able to contravene sections 1 through 35.1. So when the Alberta Prosperity Project put their question forward for a referendum, it is not fair for the elections officer to be able to say, I don't know if this is constitutional or not constitutional. Does this contravene sections 1 through 35.1? They're not qualified to do that. So it forced Elections Alberta to have to
Mm.
push the question to the court. So the only reason this question ended up in the court to begin with was because of the UCP government. So
Mm.
it's very important for people to understand that, because this
Right.
wasn't the federal government. This
Right.
wasn't, this was the UCP that pushed it there. Now, what happened this past week was that the courts have made a decision, and what they found was that the question is indeed unconstitutional. Now, what happened though before that decision was announced was the UCP and our Justice Minister, Amory, sorry, he had introduced Bill 14 the previous week, just before the AGM, on the Thursday before the AGM. And he knew the question was coming back to his desk, and that they would now be the ones to make the decision as to whether or not this question could move forward in a referendum or not.
Mhm.
So they knew the courts were going to rule in this manner. Why? Because, well, it directly contravenes sections 1 through 35.1, right? No one's
Okay.
consulted the Indigenous or anything else. So,
Right.
when the judge made the decision and made his announcement, I think that was again a part they weren't expecting, was that he was actually going to go ahead and continue with his judgment on this, because
Right.
I think what the UCP wanted was to just, okay, you know what, we're shutting it down, bring it back to the minister's desk, and he'll make the decision. We don't want the courts to rule on this, but the
Right.
courts actually made their ruling on it. So,
Mm.
I think this is really important for people in the freedom and the independence movement to understand, is that this is a mess of the UCP's making. And they tried to pull this back, um, without it being known that their piece of legislation itself is what is unconstitutional as far as being able to ask a referendum question on independence. And
Mm.
so now I think we will see, I mean, I think we definitely will see a referendum question come forward on Alberta independence. I think the UCP has backed themselves a bit into a corner here, and they're going to have to do this. But the reality is, the judge in the ruling is not inaccurate, but people have to stop blaming it on the courts and place the blame where it belongs. And that was with the UCP to begin with.
Okay. That is a great summary. Thank you so much for clearing that up. I think that that clears a lot up. I mean, we're hearing it in the media that that this has stifled or has put a stop to this, insanity of Albertans trying to exit Canada. But that's also not true. So that is wonderful to hear. And I just pulled up Bill 14 and the overview just for anybody that wanted to see it. Um, well, that is that's obviously very, very exciting that we have a, um, a clear decision and we can move forward now. Now, with Bill 14, what are the necessary steps, or what happens next in that process, Nadine?
Well, at this point now, it's going to go back to the justice minister's desk, and then they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not what that question is going to look like. Um, in which case, there has been some assurances made that the question will be allowed and will move forward. But I think it's really right now, nobody really knows, to be honest.
Mm.
But there's no commitment one way or the other as to what this is going to look like. Obviously, the APP is pushing to have a referendum here for the fall of 2026. I would love to see that happen. And I think the next few weeks are going to be the telltale. I mean, we'll know what this question is going to look like, if it needs to be amended or if it's going to go through exactly as it was presented.
Okay, let's now. This is perfect timing. I think that we talk about Mr. Thomas Lukasik and his snaky attempt to keep Alberta part of Canada, because there's some discussion that he wasn't necessarily above board with the way that he framed the petition that he went around and got 465,000 odd signatures from Albertans. My understanding is that there could have been a hint of fear porn or fear mongering, telling the potential signatories that if they didn't sign this petition, that they could become part of the 51st state of the United States, and I did hear some of that. But he obviously has accomplished the number necessary to get his question or get his view seen. Now there's some concern around he doesn't want to necessarily have a referendum, because then he triggers exactly what we're hoping for. So what are your thoughts, or what are your understandings about that process as far as Thomas Lukasik?
Well, Thomas Lukaszik's question is a policy question, and the question that the Alberta Prosperity Project put forward is a constitutional question. So they're two different things.
Mhm.
And with respect to Thomas, though, in putting forward his question, it doesn't really matter how you frame it. He petitioned for a referendum on the question of whether or not we should stay in Canada. And so that is a referendum question. So if the UCP moves forward with that referendum question, there are consequences to the answer of that question, because
Right.
what if people say, no, we don't choose to stay in Canada? There's more than one way to ask a question. And whether he was honest in how it was presented, I did hear things from different individuals, oh, if they're going to take away your pension plan. There was all sorts of things that,
Oh, yeah.
created fear in people. And it's kind of irrelevant, because really what's relevant to this is that now he has triggered a question, and there is a referendum question that could be put forward on whether you want to stay in Canada. And, for the people who are on the independent side of that equation, simply you can vote no. None of these are binding. That's a little bit problematic in the standpoint of, we don't have a UCP government or a leader that supports Alberta independence. So if we do get to finally a yes, for example, on an independence referendum question, I think we're going to end up seeing us rely on a third party more than anything else to kind of verify and validate that we have become an independent nation. Because I personally, Danielle Smith is sincere and being truthful when she says she does not support an independent Alberta, that she is a federalist. And at some point here, Albertans are going to have to decide for themselves how they want to deal with that. But yeah,
Okay.
Thomas, I don't pay a lot of attention to him. I think his idea backfired and actually, again, worked almost in the favor of Alberta
did.
independence. So thank you, Thomas.
So that's what I said too. Thanks a lot for doing all the work that you did. You fired people up, and you got 465,000 votes or signatures, and that was fantastic. Good work on you for doing that work. But really, if you go forward with a referendum, we have a referendum, and so we can just say no.
What's really interesting? So many people seem to think that we don't have enough to get to yes on a referendum. But my, oh my, isn't there a lot of fear on the other side, to the point where you've got to run around and collect 465 signatures to stay, where you have a government that's saying, let's not do this, and putting obstacles in the path. I think they're afraid we're going to win.
I think so too. I want to bring something up here because there's so much to talk about. But I thought that this post from Marty up north, I thought was so good. And I want to read this to you and to everybody here, or a part of it anyway. You can look it up for yourself. But he says here, Alberta's separatist movement mirrors the American Revolution of the 1770s in a big way. And it's stronger for the same reason. There's no single leader. In 1776, the 1776 fight wasn't won by one hero. It was committees, farmers, tavern debates, pamphleteers, the equivalent of today's podcasters. No single throat for the British to cut. Kill Washington and the revolution still marches. Today's Alberta fire is the same. There's no single president of Wexit that Ottawa can buy, smear, or jail. Instead, we have ranchers sick of carbon taxes, oil workers under constant attack, families tired of funding Quebec's programs, and even youth on TikTok turning anger into viral memes. Polls bounce between 25 and 40%. Town halls sell out and keep getting bigger. Boos at the AGM. We even some NDPers. Oh, I guess we even have some NDPers on board, all feeding the same flame from different angles. Ottawa can't negotiate with a face that doesn't exist. Every new federal insult just recruits another 1,000 regular people who are quietly done asking for permission. The American Patriots proved it. The most unstoppable rebellion has no head to chop off. Alberta's got the same grassroots DNA, millions of stubborn Albertans. I thought that was really well said. I thought it sort of sums up what we're dealing with and what we're going through. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I've already commented earlier in our conversation about we are the modern day American Revolution, and it doesn't require a leader because there are numerous leaders on this front, and it's a movement. and it is committees, and it is the everyday person, it is the membership at the UCP, and there is no snake, the head of the snake
Hmm.
cut
Hmm.
off here. So, the reality is, it's, good luck trying to contain this. It's not containable because it's growing daily. And the more the federal government, even the more the UCP government tries to, um, play their typical political games and the political theater, the more it backfires. And so, if you really want to see the Alberta independence movement take a real stark, giant leap forward, go ahead. You implement that industrial carbon tax on the 1st of
Hmm.
April and give it a few months for it to filter through and down into people's tables and people's gasoline bill and heat bill and electricity bill. And you see just how big that fuel, that fire becomes.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, this is a good segue into the next thing that I was thinking is that I I mentioned it at the beginning, was there's so much censorship and so much
Mm.
of the totalitarian clampdown that we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing it in the EU, we're seeing it in Germany. So their AFD is, they said that there was massive approval of the AFD, even though they keep murdering, potential candidates. Le Pen, Marine Le Pen in France, she's more popular than ever. We're seeing this over and over in all different scenarios in different countries. Ireland is rising up. A number of places are all rising up, and it's all sort of culminating at the same time. So what I was going to say was, we are going to see some major backlash though from this, because we are the outlier. We are that one segment of Canada, or one portion of Canada, that's going to now put up our walls and put up, our people, and say, no, we are not taking this anymore. And here's our line. And we are not going to stand for Ottawa to tell us how we are going to operate anymore. So do you have any thoughts on what are roadblocks, besides what we've already seen? Do you have any insight into what you think might happen?
Well, I think the biggest roadblock to Alberta independence, honestly, is the government itself. I mean, they have put lots of obstacles in the path to slow this movement down in hopes that it would go away.
Hmm.
But the reality is, it's not going
And
to
you mean
go
the
away.
UCP government?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Well, I mean, we obviously know the NDP certainly doesn't support this, but, the UCP government itself has not been supportive and has put obstacles in the path. Danielle Smith says, where she's gonna do another referendum on the same questions that we've already done 3 different panels. This Alberta Next panel was just the same
Right.
spin-off as the Fair Deal panel, which was the same thing as the Reform Party when they went through in the firewall letter. So when you look at all of these things, she had a mandate to fulfill, and she hasn't enacted any of them. And
Hmm.
that's where people are getting frustrated here. When you're talking about this censorship, you look at what's going on in England. You have people that are being arrested daily for tweets, posts, things that they've said, maybe even in the heat of the moment, and removed. If they see them, they come after you. So here we have Canada, where the RCMP, this is again, so even at the AGM, Danielle, riled everybody up and said she's going to protect people's guns. She's not going to She's going to encourage that the courts don't prosecute, and
Right.
she's going to direct the provincial or the police not to move forward with the confiscation of guns. But here's the thing: the RCMP, even though we contract them, we pay their bills, they work for the federal government. They are directly employed by the federal government. They are an arm of the federal government.
Right.
And so, the criminal code says this, and if that's what the criminal code says, they are well within their rights to act upon it. So you were going to get pressure from the federal government for them to do exactly that. People here seem to have mixed up Danielle Smith's comment around if you don't want to get shot, don't break into somebody's house. And she's not wrong. If you don't want to get shot, don't break into somebody's house. But the reality of that like people are making this out to be castle law. The provincial government does not have the power to change criminal law at the federal level. So, even though she can instruct or encourage that courts don't prosecute, here's the reality. At the higher level courts, even here in this province, they are appointed judges by the federal government. So whose side do you think they're on here? Albertans or on the side of the federal government? So we have a federal police force. We have federally appointed judges. She may make all the suggestions and encouragement in the world, but our ability outside of becoming an independent nation is going to be really, really difficult to do any of the things that she's proposing. So again, it's great words. She knows how to stir, the fanfare and get people excited, but the words don't and can't align always with the actions. So for me, it's, this is where we need to be really, truly, brutally honest about what it is that we're discussing, what it is that we want. Because if we want the freedom to keep our guns, they've already banned handguns in this province. You can say whatever you want, but if I can't buy, sell, or transfer, something happens to me tomorrow, my husband can't even take over my guns. They get turned back into the government. So how long is it? It's only a matter of maybe 30, 40 years, a couple of generations. And guess what? Canada, no handguns in any part of Canada, anywhere. Why? Because you've had to turn them back in. If you can't buy them, you can't sell them, and you can't transfer them.
Well, we don't want the bad guys having it, Nadine.
Yes, and we already have had police chiefs come out and tell them that, it's not the legal gun owner that is the problem.
Well,
So
of course
this
not.
is, again, rural
The criminals
versus
don't
urban.
listen to the rules. The criminals don't care about your law. They don't care about what's written on a piece of paper, or that some police person is going to come after them because they're already a criminal. They don't care.
Tell me one country, just one country. Find me one country where it ended well when the government disarmed its population. And look at what's going on in Britain. They don't have any guns, and crime has gone through the roof. There's rapes going on. There's murders going on. People are being stabbed. They're being beaten. And it's like the equivalent of saying, it's the pen's fault, for the bad author's writing. A gun is a tool. And if anything, balance of power, people who are bullies or people who are not law abiding to begin with, they're looking for easy targets, right? They truly are. And you see this in the United States in many, many occasions. It is that legal gun abiding individual who takes down somebody who is trying to inflict harm or kill other people. You see this all the time. And we're trying to basically say to people, you do not have the right to defend yourself. You do not have the right to protect your family. And that is a real problem, because the very first thing that Germany, the very first thing that Cuba, all of these countries that were communist, Pot Pol, in Vietnam, Cambodia, they took away the ability for the citizen to defend themselves.
100%. All right. So some of the other things that we have to keep our eye on, and this is one of what I'd like to leave our guests with, is that we need to keep our eye on the prize, but we need to remember that media lies. It's always going to be a lie. So they're going to try and screw with you. Also, you just mentioned it, our premier, our politicians that don't want this to go through, their silver-tongued, deceptions are gonna try and keep this from happening, because they'll try to woo you away from this revolution, I guess, is what we're moving towards. We're going to see. I think we're going to have some big, powerful organizations, Brussels, WEF, the UN, are not going to be happy with a small organization of 5 million people, the size of Norway, moving away from the totalitarian regime of Canada. They're not going to be happy with that. So we're going to see probably some, a lot more propaganda coming at us, and we have to, keep our senses.
Things are not going to get easier from here, and they're not going to get better from here. They're going to get worse first, before they get better. Because, as you point out, I mean, they did not install Mark Carney as the leader of the Liberal Party for no reason. If you look at what he is trying to do, he is driving a wedge between us and our southern neighbors, the United States, trying to align us with the very broken but very WEF UN agenda aligned EU. None of this is by accident. So people need to become aware of what is truly going on. And if Alberta has any sense, it will distance itself from all of that. The EU right now is beating the drum of war. They want war. And, their economy is collapsing. There's so much going on there. Their financial system is collapsing. And, the best distraction for a lot of that is a very large distraction. And so there's the war drums are beating. And you have Mark Carney trying to align Canada, with much of that. And where the US is pulling away from the EU, we're walking towards it. And so we've replaced the puppet with the puppet master. And Mark Carney is far more sophisticated. He's far more intelligent than anything that Trudeau could have pretended to be. If it wasn't scripted, Trudeau looked like the idiot that he actually was. But Mark Carney is not an idiot. He's a very intelligent man. And even things you saw it in his budget, we've separated out operational expenses and capital expenditures. Well, you can separate them all you want as line items, but he's pounding one off as an investment, but it's still debt. Debt is still debt. It is still the Canadian taxpayer who is going to have to pay for it. So, but that will just give you an example of just how sophisticated he knows the languages, that the language he can use to soften the blow and or make it more appealing to people. And people read headlines, they don't read details. So we got to get into the details, because the devil is always in the details.
And I would also say, connect with your local community, connect with your neighbors, connect with your friends, talk to people about independence, talk to people about the opportunities, talk to people about what you want to see Alberta look like, because that's where we have to, continue to start. And get the book. The book.
So many people were, how do I start the conversation, Nadine? And I'm like, this is how you start the conversation. You read it, you give it to a friend, and then you tell them, I'm coming over in a week. Tell me what you disagree with. That opens the door. That is the invitation for the conversation to discuss what it is that they want, what's important to them, and then we can worry about the how. But the first is to discover the what and the why.
All right, and it would make a fantastic Christmas gift for all Albertans. All Albertans should get this book for their Christmas gift.
Maybe Brett Wilson should fund,
yes.
One book for every Albertan and do something useful.
That would be a great way. That would be a great way for Brett Wilson to make a difference in this world. So, Brett, if you're out there listening and you're not completely shutting us off yet, buy the book and send it out to all Albertans. All right, Nadine, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to just mention before we sign off?
No, I think we've touched on all the topics that you had identified we wanted to speak to. Stay vigilant, my friends. Freedom is worth fighting for. And you know what? God bless.
God bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us tonight. It was a pleasure to hear from you and to get your fire in the belly, and so we can fire Albertans up. I appreciate all of what you do. Everyone, Nadine, if you don't mind sticking around, I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience, and thank you so much for being here and taking the time away from your family. God bless you all for being here. Sorry.
If I don't see you guys between now and then, have a very merry Christmas. No more happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, screw
let's
the happy
get on
holidays.
the Merry Christmas train.
Let's bring Christ back into Christmas. How about that? Let's make sure that Christ is still in Christmas. All right. Like I said, if you're still watching, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to get more eyeballs on this information. We are being shadow banned. I appreciate you being here. Make sure to send it out to your social media, to your friends, to your families. I'm going to clip it up and send it out on X, so keep an eye on for that. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Let's stay sane together. Keep your head on a swivel. And this is Bruce, and I'm out of here.
Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.